Welcome to this TypeScript tutorial. In this video, we're going to create a little cool piano in React. And it sounds something like this. I hope you can hear this because I'm not recording my desktop audio, so it's my speakers. Yeah, and as you can see, we have these nice little piano keys here, and it's going to be 12 notes for this one, so not a complete fully keyboard, but it's one octave, I think it's called also in English, because in Swedish it's called octave. We're not going to create a complete keyboard, but we're going to create these 12 notes here. But you can reuse this component if you want to build a full keyboard in the future. All right, so this is the app that we're building, and first, for this tutorial, I've created starter files for you, and I provided the link below the video. It's to my GitHub page. There you can download the starter files, and that's because I will provide you with these sounds here, so that's why you have to download the starter files. And also I've set up the project for you. So what I've done is I've used Create React App to create a TypeScript application. So I followed these steps here to create that one. So you can check that out if you don't know how to add TypeScript to Create React App, because this is a practice in TypeScript and also in CSS. And it's going to be fun because I'm also a musician. So it's great to finally use some audio in my tutorials and play around with that. All right, so let's get to it. Inside of the code editor, I will bump up the font size here. So when you download the starter files, you have these folders set up for you. You're going to have a simple app component, and the index component is the usual one. One thing I noticed with Create React App is they added strict mode to React by default. So that was new for me today. So yeah. Don't know why they've added it as default, but I guess it's great to use the strict mode by default. Then I provided you with a file that's called helpers.ts, and inside of here, that's an array with objects with all the keys. I use this array to map over all the notes when I create the keys on the keyboard. I also use Typescript to type this array. By using this little row here, we can have whatever keys we want in our object as long as there is string. So that's why I've used this row here. We're telling Typescript that the key in the object is a string, is this one, and we tell it that every key that we have in this object is going to be a string. And I set the type here to the array. And this is how you type an array in Typescript. You have the type, and then you have two array brackets to the right of the type. So we're telling Typescript that this is an array with a type of note type that I created up here. So this is the helpers file that we're going to use to create our keyboard. Then in the public folder, I also provided you with a folder with all the different sounds for the different keys. So that's why you have to download the starter files. Otherwise, you have to get those notes for yourself. And you can, of course, do that. But yeah, hey, it's easier to download my starter files. All right. So let's get started. We can close the public folder, and we're going to start in our app component. So first, I want to import the notes from the helpers. Like that. Do some auto formatting. Then we're going to create two components. So in our source folder, create a new file, one that we call Octave. I think it's called octave in English also, because these 12 notes are called an octave in Swedish. So I think it's called octave. Otherwise, name it to whatever is the correct name in English. Octave.tsx, because we're using TypeScript, so it's going to be a TSX file. And the X at the end is because we're using JSX in our files. So that's the octave, and then we create another component that we call note.tsx. All right? And we can scaffold these ones out. So inside our octave component, we import React from React, like we always do. Then we create our component, octave, and we're using TypeScript, so we want to specify this as a functional component. And in React, we have something that's called FC, that's for functional component, so react.fc. And for now, we just leave it as this because we want to scaffold it out, but we're going to have props in this one. So we have to specify the types for the props later. But for now, we just have an arrow function. And we can just make an implicit return with a div. And for this one, we can actually... No, we actually are going to send in the notes to this one, I think. So go back to the app component. And up here, we can import our Octave component from ./Octave or Octave, I don't know. From. All right. And then for now, we can just use it here. We return it. And we give it the notes as a prop. Like so. Do some auto formatting. It won't do that now because it's complaining here because we're not exporting something here. So export default Octave like that. So we will come back to the app component in a second. We create our prop types. Type props. You can name them to whatever you want. And we have our notes, and these are going to be of the note type. And if you remember, in my helpers file, I create the type, so I export that from there. And this is how you can do in Typescript. You can have a type here, and you can import it. You don't have to specify it again, because we can import this type in our Octave component. So we're also going to do that. Import, make sure to have curly braces, because this is not a default export. So we have the note type from ./helpers. All right. So note type, and this is going to be an array of note types. And this is how we specify the array. We have the note type, and we have 2 brackets to the right of the type. So that's our props for now. And when you specify props in React and Typescript, we have these angle brackets just after the FC. And then we send in the props to that one. And this will specify the type for the props in our component. You can do it in other ways also, but I won't show that now because it's confusing, I think. I'm using this way, so you have to live with that. All right. And then we can destructure out the notes prop. All right. So we have the notes, and we're actually going to map through the notes now because we want to create a key for each note. So we have parentheses. I still make an implicit return. For this one, I'm going to have a wrapper. And I've also installed the style components in the starter file. So I'm going to use style components to style this later. But for now, we're satisfied with a div. Then we map through our notes, and we specify the element, and we set that element to a note type because each element in the array is a note type. We have an inline arrow function, and we also make an implicit return. So we have parentheses. We don't need to use the return statement if we make an implicit return in our arrow functions. We haven't created our note component yet. And I think we actually can create a note component first and come back to this component. So inside the note, we import React from React const note equals an arrow function, and for now we just have a div that says note. And we export default note. So that's how we scaffold it out so we can use it in our Octave. And we import it up here, import note from ./note. And that will give us access to that component. All right, so we have our note component, and for now we're just going to specify it like this. We will give it some props soon. So this is our Octave component for now. And we go back to our app component. And hopefully it will not complain now. Yeah, that's because I forgot to close that one. All right. So save it. So let's look through this chain of components. We have the index here that will show the app component. Inside our app component, we're showing the Octave. It's going to have a wrapper later that we're going to create with style components. And our Octave component is going to show all the notes. And we send in the notes as props to this Octave component. And that is because you could, of course, import them in this component, but then it's not that reusable Because let's say that you want to create another octave with other notes, then you can just reuse this and send in the notes as props to this one. It's also about reusability, so you don't have to create new components all the time. And for now, we just have a simple note that will show a div with note inside of it. All right, I think this will work. So I'm going to start this up. npm start. Okay, so that's great. It's showing hopefully 12 of these here. So that's our notes. We can also open up console so we see if we have any errors. And of course, we have an arrow here because we want to have a key on each of the components that we map through. So in our octave, we are going to give this one a key. And from the element, we can give it the note because the note is going to be unique. If we look in the helpers, you can see that I have this property note and I have a property of color. So that's the key. And we want to give note some props. So first we want to give it the color, and we're going to grab that from element.color. Then we're going to give it the actual note, and we have that in element.note. And later we're going to give it the onClick handler also, because I'm going to do some prop drilling from the app down here. That's okay with a simple application like this. And it's also good because we're going to do some practice on how you type these props in your components. So we save this, it's going to complain and break the app for us because we have to specify these props in the note component. And we're going to do that now. So make sure that you navigate inside of your note component. We set our type, props equals an object, and you can name this to whatever you want. We have the color, it's going to be a string. The note is also going to be a string. And later we're going to have the onClick handler here. But for now, that's enough. And we're also going to specify this as a React functional component, just as before. And if you remember, when we type our props, we do that inside of these angle brackets. We give it the props object that we created up here. So there you have it. We have specified the types for our props. Then we can just structure out these props here, just as you always do in React. So we have the color and the note. I'm going to remove this sidebar. And for this one, I'm going to make a ternary operator that will choose a white or a black note. So that's why we have to create two styled components for each of them, one for the white and one for the black. And I'm going to create my styles inside of this component. Usually I have an external file that I import all the style components for this specific component because I like that structure. I don't actually like to have them in the same component. But a lot of people have that, so it's just personal preferences. So in this one, I'm going to create it just straight off in this component. So I import styled from style components. And then I create two style components, one black equals styled, and this is going to be a button because we're going to be able to click on these ones. And for now, we can just set the background to black. I'm going to change this and give it a lot more styling later. I copy this one and create a new one for the white. And we set that one to white. So that will make sure that we have two components to use. So we can create that ternary operator down here. And this is also an implicit return. So we don't have to have the return statement because this is an arrow function. And that's one thing that I think is great with arrow function, that you actually can make an implicit return. So we're going to base the return on the color that we send in. Color, if that one equals white. Then we have the question mark, because this is, as I said, a ternary operator. I have a parenthesis just to make it a little bit more clean here. And if it's white, I'm going to return a white component. And this is a button, so I'm going to give it the value of the note. That way we know what key we are pressing, and it's going to give us this character. And if we look in the helpers again, You can see that I have this note here. So this is a character for each note. And that one is going to be used as a value here on the button. And then later we're going to have an on-click handler. But for now, we can just self-close it. Have another parenthesis, a colon, and another parenthesis. Otherwise, we return the black component and we give it the value of the note also, like so, and do some auto formatting, I think. No, I have to remove this one. And no, okay, it removed my parentheses. Okay, it will add them in the auto formatting later because we're going to have more stuff here. Okay, so this is the Turner operator. What did I do here? I check if the color is white, and then we have the question mark in the Turner operator. And if this is true, it's going to return what's right of the question mark. So if the color is white, I'm going to return the white styled component that we're going to style up here. And here we have the colon in the Turner operator. And if this is false, it's going to return what's right to the colon instead. And then we return the black button from our style components. Because we style this as a button here, and a button can also have a value. We're going to use this value in our on-click handler later to specify and to know what button was pressed. So that's the Turner operator for that one. Okay, so we save it. Go back and see what we've got. Yeah, they're really, really small now, the buttons here. I can make it a little bit bigger. You can see that we have the white and the black ones here. So it seems to be working. And now we can specify the styles for our buttons. First, we move inside of the Octave component because we want to specify this wrapper here. So we import styled yet again from styled components. And here I'm going to create a styled component that's named wrapper styled.div. This is a regular div. I want to display the wrapper as flex. And I want to align the items as sender. We can also do some justify content to sender. And this is how you send the stuff with a flex box. And I also set the height to 100 viewport height. So that's a wrapper component. And this div, we actually want this div here because we just want to center one div on the screen. If we don't have this div, it will center all the nodes, and that's not good. So we create the wrapper here, and we close it down here, like that, and do some auto formatting, and that's it for our wrapper. We have centered our keyboard. That's great. So that's how you use Flexbox to center stuff in your application. Okay, let's go back to the note component and style this sucker. And this is going to be regular CSS inside of these ones. So I set the width of 40 pixels. I set the height to 130 pixels. I set the background to black as I had before. On this one, I'm going to set the position to absolute. I set the margin to 1 pixel and margin dash left to minus 20 pixels. So that's for the black keys. And also I want to have a little cool effect when we press on the keys. So we set the active pseudo class and I change the background to 3. This is really hard for me to say as a Swedish. 3. I think that's good enough. Okay, so that's the styles for our black key. And then we can actually copy this one and paste it in for the white component. And the white component is going to be a little bit bigger. So it's 60 in width and it's going to be 200 in height. The background is going to be white. On this one, I also want a border of 1 pixel solid black. We don't have to position it as absolute, but I want a little bit of box shadow on this one. So I set it to 2 pixels and 5 pixels. The margin is going to be 1 pixel. We can remove the margin left because this one is used to position the black keys on top of the other ones because they are going to be in between 2 white keys. And the active is going to be, I think, EEE. So we save it and see what we've got. And there you have it. There's the key. I have actually zoomed them now also. Yeah, there's 100%. So these are the key buttons. And they look great, I think. And you can, of course, style them to whatever you want. But this is good enough for this tutorial. Okay, so that's the keys. We still can't hear anything when we press on them. So we have to fix that now. So let's go back to the app component because I want to create the click handler for the keys inside of this component. And we're going to do some prop drilling to get that click handler down to each button. So just up here in the app component, and you may wonder why this is a regular function because I'm using arrow functions otherwise. And this is because it's the default function in Create React App. I didn't change that one. So you can, of course, use an arrow function if you want to do that also. Const, and we call this handle click. And we're going to take in the event for this one. And how do we type this event with Typescript? Well, we have something in React that's called mouse event. So React.mouse event, you can also, if you want, you can, of course, import it up here. But I don't think that's better. I don't know. That's a personal preference. So I write it out as React and the dot mouse event here instead. I don't think that this will pollute the code in some way to do it like this because it's not that long to type out React before it. And then we can specify the type. This is a generic type, as they say in TypeScript. So we can specify this in more detail inside of these angle brackets. And this one is going to be an HTML button element. And as you can see, it autofills it for us here. So this is a great way. If you don't know, you can just type something and it will show all the alternatives for you. So this will tell this function that we can only accept mouse events that's from an HTML button element, nothing else. Okay, I'll remove this sidebar. This is an arrow function again. And inside of here, we can console log out the e.currentTarget.value. This is going to give us the value that we set in the node component. So for now, that's enough. We just console log this out for now. And to our octave, we want to send in this as a prop. So we can call it click handler and handle click. And you can see TypeScript complains all the time if you do something that you shouldn't do. And in this case, we are giving the octave a prop that don't exist. We haven't typed this. So that's why it complains for us. You can see here that it says that this not exist on this type. So that's, of course, means that we have to create this type in the octave component. So that's what we do. We go to our octave component and we specify our click handler. That's our prop that we sent in. And we already knew what type this event is. So we have the same React mouse event. And this was an HTML button element. So that's the type for this parameter in this function. And then we return nothing from it. So you can type it as a void. This big font size that I have, it driving me crazy because I have it because you should see what I type on the screen, but it's actually really hard to work with a really giant font size like this. We now have our click handler as a prop. So we can use it inside of our component. And as we map through our nodes here, we're going to pass this down as a click handler also. And this is what I said, this is called prop drilling. It's usually not good to do this prop drilling, but in a small application like this, it doesn't matter. And it's also great practice for us to specify and type our props. So that's why I'm doing that here. So we give it the click handler also. And then yet again, TypeScript complains because we don't have this prop typed on our node component. do some auto formatting. We save it, and we continue down our chain. So we go to our note component. We already have 2 props. And yet again, we specify our click handler prop. And we know the type of this function. So it's the react.mouse event. We have the angle brackets, and it's an HTML button element. And we return nothing. So we set that one to void. Okay, so I think that's enough practice in click handler types in TypeScript for this tutorial. All right, then with the structure of this one here, the click handler, like that. And we have to set that click handler for our buttons. And we know that these are buttons. And on each button, we have an on-click. And we set it to the click handler like that. And we do the same for the black button. On-click equals click handler. Do some auto formatting. And there you have it. It brought back my parentheses here that I had first. Okay, and this one has to be a capital C. And we have no arrows, I guess. It seems to be working. So let's go back to our application. And as you can see, we are console logging out each key here that we press. So that's sweet. We just have one more little thing to do, and that's to actually play the audio. And we have our click handler in our app component. So in JavaScript, there are built-in functions that we can use for audio handling. So I create a new const that I call audio. Yet again, you can call it whatever you want. I create a new audio. This is built in JavaScript. And it wants the audio URL as an argument. So in this case, I'm going to use backticks instead. I'm always annoyed because it gives me 3 backticks as default when I type in just 2. Strange, I haven't figured out why. And as I showed you before, I put these audios in this public and sounds, so we can grab them from that one. The public folder is the one that is going to be run. It contains the index.html and the built JavaScript from React. So in here, we can type sounds. And if we look on the name, they are all named piano. So piano. And then as this is a template literal, we can make a JavaScript expression with $sign and curly braces. So we have piano, we have an underscore first. And then we have our current target value here. So we can paste that one in. It will give us the note here and add that to the file name. And these are also MP3 files, so we specify .mp3. So this is the audio. We create the audio here, and then we want to play it. And you can do that by audio play. You call the function play on that object. And this is all you have to do. And hopefully we can save this, and this will work. Sweet! I don't know if you can hear it. I'll turn up the volume. There you have it. It's actually quite simple to create something like this because I think it's really cool and it looks more impressive than it is. Yeah, that's great. Okay, hope you enjoyed this little tutorial in how to use TypeScript to build this little keyboard, the piano keyboard. If you like this, I have a lot of tutorials already on my channel, and make sure to subscribe to get weekly free videos on front-end development and a lot of React, Gatsby and TypeScript and stuff like that. See you in another one.